before he goes to work. And then the phone's gone and that's it.
We wasn't prepared. They had to scramble. This virus took everybody by surprise. And they're not all up to speed yet, especially African Americans and Latino and poor children who's already behind.
I think it's so easy to forget about the parts of the student population who have such high needs in times like this. It's not that kids with disabilities can't learn. It's that they need the supports and services to do so. And it's so hard to get them all that they need right now.
Can you clap this measure for me?
Okay. I did.
The pandemic obviously isn't causing the problems in CUNY. The problems in CUNY have been there. The gross inequities within higher education, the rising cost of tuition. So I do think that this pandemic is kind of just revealing that, right? It's kind of pulling back the cloth on that. And we have to kind of figure out how are we going to make sure that these inequities don't prevent certain students from thriving, especially if this online learning is our new normal.
I'm just waiting for the pandemic to be over.
Yeah, why?
It's just totally different. I'm 48. I prefer being in a class setting. I don't know, maybe it's because I'm older, but I like to be able to approach the desk and ask a question in person. And I feel like I'm able to grasp things a little bit easier.
I have some older students who have said that they, really don't use the computer. And so it's been challenging for them to even learn how to attend a live class, to locate where a Google Meet invite is. It's been hard for them to figure out how to submit an assignment. And they have kind of given up because they felt frustrated by that.
There are a lot of variables as hearing teachers that we have no control over with remote learning. For example, sound, background noise. I can't tell you how many times I've been on the line with a student and I hear so many things in the background, a TV, a little sister or brother yelling, a dog barking, and it's an absolute nightmare for when you're trying to get a hearing session done.
I've been teaching classes and some of my students will be sitting in their car because it's the only quiet place that they can learn. Some of them have to go into their bathrooms to hear the lesson.
So is not passing and he hasn't done any work since writing paragraph 1 and 2.
Right. And he's so great when he's in the live classes. So I want to figure out a way to kind of loop him in. But it's hard because it's like he also, had a family loss. So it's like,
right.
I'm like, are we still holding these students to the same standards? I don't know. When I'm teaching in person, I can check in with 10 different students in a matter of minutes. When I'm doing it online, I have to schedule those interactions and hope that they attend and show up. I mean, right now we have students who are struggling to show up, students who are not turning in assignments, and we are just trying to kind of triage.
Them being able to go to school and be in the same room with kids just like them who have hearing loss too, I don't know of a way to replace that online. I mean, yes, we have Zoom, we have sign language interpreters. It's not the same as being in the room together and having that camaraderie. A lot of them have one-to-one paraprofessionals who are there with them all day. That's not happening now. So it's hard to say what is really going on at home, and through no fault of the parent or anyone, it's just not the same experience. And I just hope it's not that detrimental.
The whole point of the special ed supports and services is to enable them to access the curriculum, to give them the tools they need in order to learn alongside their more typical peers. And if they're not getting all of that, which they're not, because the remote plans are not everything that the IEP is. So if they're not getting all of those, it means that their access is more and more reduced, and that those gaps between kids with disabilities and their more typical peers are growing.
A colleague of mine who teaches a middle school classroom of deaf and hard of hearing children, she has one of my students from 5 years ago. And she noticed that he wasn't turning on his video during the Zoom calls. And she figured out that it was because he's discouraged from using sign language at home. And he knew that if he turned his video on, he would sign because he's an excellent signer. And that just about broke my heart that he couldn't turn his video on because he knew his mom was going to tell him to stop signing. Obviously, that would not happen in the classroom. And I've seen the students sign as a primary form of communication. So I just gotta check. Yeah, so.
This probably won't be the last time that the schools have to go remote. Lessons need to be learned, planning needs to take place. We should be ready next time this happens to put remote instruction and appropriate remote instruction in place, from day one or day two at the latest.
Well, it's really wonderful to see you, and hopefully we can do a video again soon. Okay?
Bye.
So if we're going to work on a plan for restoring Brownsville to better than it was before, tell me one thing from each of your respective points of view, and I'll start with you, Dr. Lewis. One thing that has to be a part of that recovery plan.
We have to invest in the brilliance and strategy and resilience of community partners that are there and have been doing work and have survived multiple things before. But that also means we gotta, divest from the things that have harmed and hurt people in Brownsville, all the panic and neglect and the issues. So yes, invest in our dopeness and divest from the things that harm us.
My mantra for all these issues is that we have to get at the root. The pandemic exposed already glaring health disparities that exist. So what we have to do is really dig deep and go to what is the source of why we are affected disproportionately across the board with all of the various diseases. And it's because of neglect, medical apartheid, the racism within the healthcare delivery system, the employment system, the housing system. And we have to name racism, and we have to have race-specific solutions that are grounded in equity. Because if we kind of have a race-blind solution, the health disparities will stay after COVID is gone.
Underlying the racial disparities in health are the kinds of stress and trauma that go with being in poverty or not being able to pay your bills every month, worrying about that, worrying about where you're going to live. Conditions produce stress. Stress produces hypertension, produces diabetes, even cancer. And Black folks have been living in trauma, as Monifa Bendelli said, well before COVID. COVID just brought it out into the news.
The systems that would help us to not have these comorbidities, our health and hospitals, our emotional and wellness systems, our education systems, the employment systems, they have really, really small budgets, right? And we're living in a city where the police budget is $6 billion. And so our budget is a value statement. There has to be a shift in the values of the city so that we're really investing in these systems that we know are going to close those gaps. People are in the streets, people are demanding these investments. And so we need to strike the iron while it's hot.
All over our neighborhoods and all over Brownsville, there exists these kind of small businesses that tend to the mental, physical, and spiritual health of the community, with a small business frame, with ancestral and culturally relevant and respectful techniques. Those folks should be poured into to continue to create an ecosystem versus having to struggle to look at month to month, day to day, the bills of things.
One of the narratives that we believe is that, the person on the white or Black horse isn't coming to save us, right? And so we collectively, myself and a number of community-based organizations, residents included, have decided that we were going to start taking back, some of the ownership. Right now, if we wait for anyone else to do it, it won't get done.
The lived experience of my community, whether it's Bed-Stuy or Brownsville, or just Brooklyn or Black women or Black people, is that what we've seen and felt over the last couple of months is, as Anita was saying, language that didn't really resonate with us, stories and feelings of loss and death. I mean, we could all do more than two hands of people that died. But then all of a sudden we saw all sorts of money come in terms of riot gear. The way we've experienced the budget and the city's priorities has been more kind of in those palpable spaces than the things that we needed just to live.
Just last year, the NYPD paid $70 million in settlement cases. So that's not, to get rid of that number, it's not about laying off people who were hired more recently, but who's committing this abuse that's causing the city $70 million in 1 year? And what kind of things could Anita and her task force do with $70 million a year? Dr. Lewis said that the people of Brownsville already know what they need. They already have the genius, it needs to be scaled up, and they also need to have the power to execute the solutions that they know work for the communities and not be blocked, from a top-down way. So, it's money, but it's also money and self-determination.
What is the prescription for getting Brownsville well on our terms?
Trust Black women, listen to Brownsville genius. It makes sense for folks within power to create the space to hear the voices, to talk about what needs to be done. And it always triggers me a bit when folks are asking for additional labor from people who we've all just said are dealing with all of the inequalities and inequities. And there are folks like the Brooklyn Rapid Recovery and Response Team, BCJC, Combine, the Health and Wellness Table. We're organized. We know we could create the space and invest. You got 3 Black women here who could easily pull together a group of folks to tell you what we need and put some numbers behind it too. But the prescription is to just love each other well and listen and invest in that dopeness.
As per U.S. law, any child bought or sold into the sex trade is a victim of human trafficking.
Why is the first time I'm hearing about this?
On the same websites where you sell a couch, there are sections to buy people.
Really?
And up to half of these victims are boys. There is no such thing as a child prostitute, only a victim of exploitation. And it could be anyone.
She's talking about me. Should I say something?
Welcome to East New York. I'm gonna show you the amazing businesses. Let's go say hi to Miguel, the best hot chocolate in East New York. Vito!
It's not like a customer, it's like a family to me now.
Danger Travel came to the community with only one little desk, and now he owns the whole building. This is a community of opportunities. Hello. The health of the neighborhood is also places like the Cypress Hill Senior Center. We have a little bit of everything here, and everyone feels like family here. East New York is family to me now.
Brooklyn's #1 advocate, the next borough president, will be tasked with leading our borough through an economically crippling pandemic and unprecedented loss. The BP's influence on land use, education, and capital investment is critical to Brooklyn's resilience and recovery. That's why this forum, presented by BRIC TV in partnership with the New York City Campaign Finance Board, is happening now. We intend to give Brooklynites the information they need to make their ranked choice on who will be working for us at Borough Hall. And we aren't taking this lightly, and we don't intend to waste any time. The candidates have agreed to a format and rules designed to make sure they all get the opportunity to be heard. There will be 30 seconds of introductory remarks, 1-minute responses to questions, but no rebuttals or interruptions. Any interruptions will actually result in forfeiting 30 seconds from the interrupter's next response. So the candidates have been sequenced tonight in alphabetical order by their last name and will answer each question in the same sequence for the entire evening. Each of the candidates must have been on the ballot as of today and have raised and spent 2.5% of the expenditure limit for borough president as of Friday, May 21st, in compliance with New York City's Campaign Finance Board regulations. So that is the quick introduction, but I would love to bring everyone into the room right now to give you an idea of those vying for the opportunity to be Brooklyn's next borough president. Thank you all for being here, and thank you to our community partners who will be providing questions that are vital to their area of interest as well as our borough's vitality. So just a little bit of a getting to know you question, which we've earmarked 30 seconds for your response. Eric Adams walked into the office virtually uncontested for 2 terms as borough president. Now all of a sudden we're faced with so many competent, passionate people, 7 in the room right now. So the question is, why borough president and why now in this very competitive year? And I'm going to ask that by way of introduction to our first candidate, Robert E. Cornegy Jr.
Thank you, Brian. A great question. I chair the city's committee on housing and buildings currently, and I'm the past chair in the last legislative session of the city's committee on small business. And I think that those are the 2 real pivots and shifts on recovery and resiliency that are necessary. So I think I have a unique brand of leadership. I also think that I'm uniquely qualified to lead based on the chairmanships that I've held. I'm on finance, the budget negotiation team. I chair the Democratic Conference. I chair the MWBE Commission. All things that I
believe that is your time, candidate Cornegy. We've got a 30-second timer down there, and you might have heard that ding, so we're going to keep things tight in the service of our voters being informed tonight, but we thank you for that answer. Now we're going to be turning to candidate counsel.
Thank you so much. Kim Counsel, I'm a nonprofit executive, a minister, a law librarian, and a mom of 2. Grew up in Bed-Stuy, the oldest of 5 with lots of love, but the struggle was real. Decades later, people in my neighborhood still face the same struggles. I've worked with community organizations to do the work that government wouldn't or can't, building over 1,000 units of affordable housing, helping small businesses to succeed, opening a health clinic when hospitals started shutting down, and creating violence interrupter programs to combat gun violence in my community. Wow.
Well, 30 seconds is 30 seconds when that clock is running, isn't it? So thank you for that response. I'm looking now to candidate Carrie Edwards. Why borough president? Why now?
Spent 20 plus years of my career in public service. I'm the only candidate with borough-wide experience working with 2 governors. I was the former vice president of Brookdale Hospital, the first VP of color in the history of a hospital. But that's where I decided to run because I was working next to union workers who had great pensions, great jobs, who were living in shelters or living in homeless or their cars because they couldn't afford the borough. And I think it's really just time that we have somebody from on the ground who can really represent our community. So my name is Carrie Edwards, and thank you for having me.
Thank you for your response, candidate Edwards. Now, as it's been before, the same question posed to candidate Anthony T. Jones. We're not going to start the clock until you unmute yourself. So this is the grace of the beginning of the debate forum. So the 30 seconds is yours, sir. Why Borough
Okay,
President?
thank you.
Why
I'm
now?
sorry. I'm Anthony T. Jones. I'm the district leader from the 55th Assembly District. And it's not about just now. 2 years ago when I was running for my re-election for district leader, and I got 95% of the vote, never knocked on a door before, and that was based upon my passion. Even now today, as the person who has been chuckling and driving and moving forward to try to get where I am here today, I'm the last guy in the race for Brooklyn Borough President, but here I am now, started from the bottom.
And now he's here, I imagine is what was coming. We're going to turn next for an answer to the question of why Borough President and why now, and I guess specifically, why you, candidate Antonio Reynoso?
Thank you so much. Brooklyn gave me everything, and I'm ready to give everything back to it. My name is Antonio Reynoso. I'm a current council member of the 34th District. I care deeply about building back better and making sure that we have an equitable Brooklyn. My job is to make sure that I put Brooklyn in the center of the universe, which is its rightful place. Thank you.
All right, with 10 seconds to spare, I like where this is going. We're going to turn now to Joanne Simon. Why Borough President? Why now, candidate Simon?
Thank you. I'm Assemblymember Joanne Simon, and I just pulled up my folding chair because it's time for Brooklyn to have a woman borough president. I'm a former teacher of deaf children, a community activist, a disability civil rights lawyer, and I've been a solidly progressive and accessible legislator and coalition builder. I grew up in a large working class family. I'm the first in my family to go to college, putting myself to college, grad school, and law school. I'm excited to bring my passion, my skills, and my experience to work for all of Brooklyn. Thank you.
Thank you. And for the final response to the question of why Brooklyn, why now, and why you specifically as Borough President, I'm looking at Lamar Miller Whitehead.
Thank you so much. And the question would be back, why not? I am the bishop of two churches, one in Brooklyn, one in Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm also the mentee of our current borough president, Eric L. Adams. My father, Arthur Miller, was the first I Can't Breathe. He was beat and strangled to death by 16 police officers because of the color of my father's skin. So my father was the first I Can't Breathe. George Floyd and Eric Gardner was I Can't Breathe. And when I become the borough president, this will stop. Systemic racism will stop. And I will, thank you.
Thank you for that answer. So now we're going to give you all some much needed time to expound on some answers to a question posed first by Vladimir Sterling. Vladimir is the Senior Director of Policy and Government Affairs at the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce, which happens to be one of our title partners for this event. Thank you for partnering with us on this important forum. In addition to being partners with us, the Brooklyn Chamber is also one of the largest and most influential organizations of its kind in the entire state of New York. Vladimir, on to your question.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, everyone, for your time this evening. So my question is, small business reopening and survival is going to be key to Brooklyn's economic recovery coming out of the pandemic. Brooklyn is still a small business economy, with over 84% of our 63,000 businesses employing less than 10 people. Hence, what can the borough president do in his or her role to ensure that our small businesses may reopen and recover effectively?
So effective reopening and recovery for all of those small businesses that keep Brooklyn running. And that question lands with you first, candidate Cornegie. We're waiting for you to get unmuted just there. We'll start your time, your minute right now. Go for it.
Thank you for that question. But the reality is that the Brooklyn Chamber and my office partnered to bring forward the Chamber on the Go program, which actually is a program that takes all of the city services and puts it in an RV fashion so that the city's businesses can have access to capital and technical assistance. In my first 100 days, we have a $10 million fund that's set up for small businesses, not low interest and no interest loans, but actual grants for small businesses to help them build capacity coming out of a pandemic. It has already been stated that 1/3 of our small businesses, especially minority and women-owned businesses, will not be able to return after the pandemic. The relief through access to capital is quintessential. I will have the first corporately funded through the banks $10 million fund access to our small businesses from the Borough President's office. I look forward to doing that in partnership with the Brooklyn Chamber.
Thank you, Candidate Cornegie. Now we're going to turn to Candidate Kim Council. The question, just to reiterate, was what could you do as Borough President to ensure that our businesses reopen and recover effectively?
Very good question. I'm currently the vice chair of the Local Development Corporation of East New York, and we work with a lot of small businesses to help them to get, microloans, financing, business plans, and things of that nature. So as Borough President, I plan on creating a small business resource center to help the small businesses navigate all of the services and the resources that are available to them. As we know, many of our small businesses were not able, they didn't have the capacity to get the PPP. By the time they got this stuff together, the money was gone. And we're also going to create a mobile Borough Hall to bring those resources to every single community to make sure that they have access to what they need and help with navigating those services.
Thank you for that. We appreciate your response. And now we are going to turn next to Carrie Edwards for that question about your response to your capacity as Borough President, making sure that businesses reopen and recover effectively.
Look, using the platform of the Borough President's office, we have to bridge access to resources. One of the things that we would like to do is really create a dynamic where we can introduce legislation where we could have small businesses get tax breaks for those who aren't meeting the threshold. Secondly, there's something that the city's been sitting on for quite some time called the economically targeted investment. And as Borough President, you're allowed to put an appointee on the public education panel that also sits on the pension board. And what we can do is leverage that investment from the New York State pension to supply small businesses with what could be close to a $2 billion annual budget of creating job opportunities, which is really targeted for small business and workforce housing.
All right, thank you for that answer, candidate. Now we are going to be turning to candidate Anthony T. Jones for the question about small business recovery, reopening. And I see that you're getting unmuted over there. Looking forward to your answer.
First of all, it's important for us to understand that we are moving out of COVID-19 and the pandemic era. However, we are not there totally just yet. But as the next Borough President of Brooklyn, I want to make sure that we educate our business owners about the resources that are available to them, because even to this day, a lot of businesses, small businesses, still don't know about the small loans and the different resources that are available to them. So I have to make sure that as Borough President, we merge them with the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce, who's responsible for different types of things in terms of educating small businesses. But we want to make sure that we still go into the whole idea of opening with caution, because even though the businesses may be open and get money, but if the people are still afraid to come out, then business can't grow. So we have to ensure that people feel safe, and let's get the business the money that they need in order to continue to do business and grow.
All right, thank you for that. I'm sure we're going to get into some of those issues of growth and safety and public safety as we move on a little bit further into the forum. But right now, it is the opportunity for candidate Antonio Reynoso to answer that question about the Borough President's role in ensuring that small businesses reopen and recover effectively.
Look, my record speaks for itself. I'm not going to talk to you only about what I will do, but I'm going to talk to you about what I've already done. I was able to pass the outdoor dining legislation, which saved 100,000 jobs and countless businesses from Brooklyn. It's this thoughtful and creative leadership that we need in the borough office and Borough Hall, so that we can actually find solutions to the problems we have. When it comes to COVID recovery, what I want to do is have a one-stop recovery shop in Brooklyn Borough Hall that's going to allow for us to have a conversation with businesses that have been left behind to the institutions that currently exist in our city. We want to make sure we can get the PPP loans and that our businesses are the ones that are thriving and that are receiving those resources. If we allow for the same people to do the same work, we won't be successful. I'm looking to be the borough president that can build a Brooklyn for all of us, and looking forward to doing that come June 22nd.
Come June 22nd, we got that in there. That's when we expect to see you all at the polls, if not a moment before during early voting. But still someone who's vying for that #1 position on your ranked choice voting ballot. So we'd love to hear your ideas, Candidate Simon, on ensuring that our small businesses reopen and recover effectively.
Thank you very much, Brian. You know, our small businesses are the primary generator of jobs in our borough. They provide so much to our communities. They are part of our safety net in our communities. And they are also the place where the jobs of the future are going to be created. And so, #1, we have to work with the various organizations, the informal organizations, the BIDs, the merchant associations, the groupings that people have come up with during COVID to help each other out, much like the mutual aid groups, but also work on those industries of the future, such as green economy and the Marijuana Regulation and Tax Act, which I was proud to be a prime sponsor of, which will create a whole new industry that will bring jobs to the communities, and particularly to communities that have been disproportionately affected by the criminalization of marijuana.
All right, thank you for that response, Candidate Simon. And now for the final take on just what a borough president can do to ensure that our small business community can reopen and recover effectively, to you, Candidate Whitehead.
Thank you so much. I'm the candidate that's not going to give you the politically correct response that all the other candidates is going to give you. I'm going to be the voice for the voiceless. What I have already raised, if you watch and if you look at all of my endorsements, they are $1 million influencers from the industry. And I've already raised $50 million to go towards a nonprofit fund that I'm going to create as the Brooklyn Borough president. And I'm going to give this to small businesses because at the end of the day, it's about cash in hand. We can definitely negotiate about the taxes and we can talk about bringing the people out. But at the end of the day, we have to restore our community by bringing money into play. I'm not going to deal with banks with the grants because small businesses get caught up with the debacle of going back and forth with the grants and the PPP. We're not doing none of that. I've already raised it, and all I have to do is create a structure. Thank you.
So you got $50 million waiting for a structure to pass out to businesses. All right, take note there. So we are going to go into our second question of the night from a partner in the community, but we're actually talking to someone who's a partner right in the very building where I'm standing. Isabel Alcantara is an associate producer at BRIC TV, one of Brooklyn's leading, and dare I say, New York City and the world's cultural institutions. So Isabel, the floor is yours. What's your question?
Thanks, Brian. My question is, to fortify and grow the creative sector and expand access to Brooklynites of all incomes and ethnicities, the borough must first and foremost treat the sector as the economic engine and resource that it is, and at the same time tackle the challenges of making the borough more secure and affordable for creative workers. What policies will you create and/or investments will you make that will reinforce the roles of arts and culture as core to Brooklyn economic vibrancy?
So Candidate Cornegie, we're going to you first, looking for a response to what investments you'd make or things that you would create to make sure that the arts and cultures are seen as the economic engine that they are and receive sufficient support.
I will answer that like another candidate has answered that. The work that I've done around that, I have the only ambassador and director to arts and culture in any city council office. And we put that in place because we understood the value of arts and culture, and we wanted to make sure that the resources were available and are prioritized to undergird that. Currently, I'm working with HPD to create an artist colony, which is a building that houses artists at below market rents, and in the commercial space below, collectively uses that space to put on concerts, to have art galleries. There's a precedent for that to set around the country. We would be I want this borough, my district in particular that I serve now, to be the first to be able to create an artist colony that has affordable housing. In the borough of Brooklyn, we know for a fact that most of our creatives, this is where they live, this is where they work, this is where they worship, this is where they play. So creating a system that allows them to live affordably in this borough and continue to give back.
All right, we appreciate that. We'll all continue to give back, and we're going to be listening now for the plan that candidate council has, policy or plan or investments that you'd like to make to reinforce the role of arts and cultures as core to Brooklyn's economic vibrancy.
Well, one of the things that I plan on creating as borough president is a hidden treasures tour. There are a lot of arts and institutions to study, to see throughout the borough. So we want to create. Can you hear me? I'm sorry. We want to create an event that will, that will allow people to go and celebrate all of those different things. But we also want to make sure, again, with the Small Business Resource Center, that we're supporting those organizations and those entities. We also have a movement in East New York to create a community land trust. And I think that we should think about this as an option and a viable option to create affordability around housing for that industry.
Thank you. We appreciate that response. Now we're going to turn to you, candidate Edwards. Arts, vibrancy, cultural currency, but economic engine.
Well, the first thing we do have to talk about is the affordability. When Dumbo was the art central of Brooklyn, they got priced out. When Bushwick was becoming the art central of Brooklyn, we got priced out. And I think we do have to protect the affordability metrics specifically around the artist in that way. But also this past Saturday, Park Slope had something like an art crawl. And what I want to do is kind of retake that and use vacant spaces to create these art installations, these art movements where we can have the community come, express, and donate and really create an economic engine. And the last part about it is I need to use the resources of Borough Hall to protect the investments of artists and use capital funding either to protect them in that way or discretionary funding to support any type of art programs.
Thank you for that. So the same question is going to fall now to you, candidate Jones. What policies would you create or investments you'd like to make to reinforce the role of arts and cultures as core, not only to the way we live, but as economically viable?
Well, one of the things I would, when I become Brooklyn Borough President, I'm going to piggyback off of some of the things that the legend Marty Markowitz did. And I want to make Brooklyn one of the hubs, the tourist hub. We have so many landmarks in Brooklyn. We have so many beautiful areas in Brooklyn. We have multi-cultural restaurants in Brooklyn. I want to make this a tourist hub and invite people from all over the world to show them how we interact and the great things that we have here in Brooklyn, which was going to create jobs. It's going to bring business to the other question that you talked about, how the business get back on track after COVID. That's what I'm going to do, make Brooklyn a tourist hub so that we can create jobs in Brooklyn through tourism.
All right, we'll take everybody's money.
That's right.
Going to turn now to candidate Antonio Reynoso for your question about the arts and culture and how they are key to economic vibrancy.
It is about the money. Look, let's be perfectly honest. Artists in Brooklyn that struggle mostly because of space and an inability to have it. What I want to do is use the funding that is awarded to us through the city of New York to have a non-for-profit acquisition fund, using for $60 to $70 million to be able to actually purchase and acquire the property in which they do work, can give access to space that is just not viable or present in a lot of these artists' lives right now. Artists spend more than half of their money just finding space to be able to produce their talent or show their art. I want to change that with this neighborhood, with this acquisition fund that we're looking to build in the Borough President's office. I also think that we need to work on permitting. The permitting for space or to use the open streets should be free and easy, and folks can also use that to display their talent and art here in Brooklyn.
Thank you, candidate Reynoso. We're turning now to candidate Simon for your response to policies you'd create, investments you'd make to reinforce that role of arts and culture.
Well, thank you. One of the things we need to do is get creative and serious about the use of capital dollars. So for example, one of the things that I know many arts and cultural organizations need is money for the internet. They need money for their websites. You can't run a cultural organization without a website. And I believe that should be capital. That is something that we could be able to then direct that capital funding to from the borough president's office to support, to also engage, experts to work with people to help them build that network out. And to provide additional funds for them. I'm very proud that we, in our $1 billion that we provided in state grants and tax credits this year in our budget, we squared away $50 million for the arts community, specifically to address the issues that they raised. And I will continue to advocate for that with the state legislature, as well as with our federal government.
All right, now we're going to turn to candidate Whitehead. You had $50 million earmarked for the small business. What are your plans for helping out the arts community so they can remain and drive that economic vibrancy?
Well, like I said before, if you look at my my endorsements, they're all people of arts and culture, celebrities, actors, actresses, musicians. And one of the things that I'm going to do as the president, I'm never going to let anyone control my narrative. And as you hear the other candidates, they're talking about what's in discretionary funds, but why? I was on a conversation with Akon, the rapper, and I was asking him, how can we bring the African community to Brooklyn, right? How can they bring their money to us to create a culture? And one of the reasons why we failed doing arts and culture is because we left Brownsville, East New York, Crown Heights. We left the Black and brown communities out of the question. And I'm not going to be the borough president that's going to leave anybody behind. We just have to produce a system so therefore we can create a diverse art and culture society in Brooklyn.
All right, thank you for that response. Now we are going to shift a little bit with a new question from the person who happens to be the newly installed president of Medgar Evers College. You know, Medgar Evers is Brooklyn's community college, 50 years and going. We're happy that you celebrated that 50 last year. Looking forward to so much more to come out of Brooklyn's community college. The floor is yours, Dr. Ramsey.
Well, thank you. The office of the Brooklyn Borough President has been supportive of Medgar Evers College over the years. Medgar Evers College is a precious community jewel that needs ongoing support. 76% of Medgar Evers students are residents of the Borough of Brooklyn. And therefore, most of them have come out of schools in the Borough of Brooklyn. A number of these students are marginalized, resulting in homelessness, housing instability, and food insecurity. A number of marginalized students view a higher education degree as a stepping stone out of poverty. However, these circumstances have led to withdrawal from classes, low GPA, mental and physical health challenges. Medgar Evers College established a unit, the Transition Academy, to assist marginalized students whose essential needs are not being met. However, we are resource challenged and need financial support to assist these students. Can you please describe a plan by which you would provide support to the college to assist these students, your students? Thank
Our
you.
students, 76%. You heard Dr. Ramsey there. So 76% of those students come from Brooklyn, and nothing is happening in a vacuum. They're seeing their education as a stepping stone. So candidate Carnegie, beginning with you, describe a plan by which you'd provide support to the college. Unmute for a second there. We're going to hold your time. It's a Zoom age, right? This happens every day, all the time. So please.
So first of all, we have the largest bully pulpit coupled with our capital and discretionary funding. I've been around long enough to have been in on a lot of the capital requests and asks from prior administrations, and have been very happy to support the moves of expanding the campus and making it and beautifying it. To me, Medgar Evers is our local HBCU, or historically Black college and university, and should be treated as such, as the gem that it is. So creating pipelines for discretionary and capital funding to grow that institution is a priority for me. That's my plan. It's been my plan. I've worked with the growth and development of Medgar. As beautiful as it is now, I remember when there were only a couple of buildings on that campus. I've been also responsible for the zoning and planning as a council member to the ancillary district to work forward to get it where it is. I think that just making sure that we commit those resources and funding in partnership with the local leaders.
All right, thank you for that response. So I'm looking at candidate council right now to make sure that you can be heard on the subject of a plan. Support the Transition Academy. What are you going to do?
Well, I mean, I definitely agree with Councilmember Cornegie that we definitely need to allocate capital funds and discretionary funds for that. I sit on I'm the regional representative for the HBCU International Task Force of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, and proud to have pushed to have Medgar Evers College receive an endowment from that fund. We pledged to raise $10 million and have set aside thousands of dollars to set up those types of scholarships for colleges. But the other thing that we need to do is to work with other organizations and community-based organizations, members of the Divine Nine, in order to create a sustainable plan to create some income that will help that program. And so again, it's the bully pulpit, it's the capital funding, it's the discretionary funding, it's using our resources, whatever it takes, in order to make sure that we're able to support those individuals who are our future, knowing that education is the great equalizer, and that is the thing that will help them to level the playing field of our resources.
Thank you, candidate council. I see you there, Alpha Kappa Alpha. I see it in your color scheme. Got it. Now we're going to go on to candidate Edwards. Please describe a plan where you can help support the college.
Well, President Ramsey, welcome to Crown Heights. I've grown up 2 blocks from the school. I've swam in the pool, and I actually started my first community program in your gym, in the Carroll Street gym. So thank you and welcome. First things, I got to put my money where my mouth is. So I'm going to say this publicly. I'm going to commit $100,000 a year to this transitional plan, specifically because I know how many students and how hard it is for students to go to Medgar Evers. Also, I know you had to cut your adult education program, which is also a secondary piece, and I'd like to also help fund that. More importantly, I know that I'd like to expand your current food pantry, which is doing amazing work, but it's also helping to feed those folks, and like to partner that with the Kingsborough Farm, the Kingsborough Community Farm, because that's the necessity piece. And the last thing is, I'd like to really take some of the housing vouchers that we get and set aside for your students, because again, without creating that, we lose.
Thank you for that comprehensive explanation, candidate Edwards. Now we're going to ask you, candidate Jones, how would you intend to provide support to Medgar Evers College? You're unmuted, it's on you.
President Ramsey, I'm probably the only candidate who has actually graduated from Medgar Evers College, and I'm proud of that. When I was 14 years old, I lived on Carroll Street at a boys group home and for years. And I looked across the street and I said, one day I'm going to go to that college. And I did that. And I was involved in student government. So on day one, when I become Brooklyn Borough President, I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to do or how I'm going to do it. You're going to come and meet with me at my office and give me my marching orders in terms of what you need and what it needs to take to give it to you and to help the students and Medgar Evers College continue to grow. And that's real talk.
All right, another proud Medgar graduate. Happy to see it. Now we are looking at candidate Antonio Reynoso. How would you help the college and by extension that 76% of Brooklynites who attend and just the entire student body and populace of Brooklyn?
So extremely proud of the work that Medgar Evers College does and its representation. It's Brooklyn through and through. So President Ramsey, thank you so much for being here. And I think that you will get a universal thank you from every candidate that's running for Brooklyn Borough President. Look, Anthony Jones is absolutely correct. We need to ask the school what its needs are, and we need to do everything we can to give them the resources necessary so that they can thrive. We're not going to have all the answers, but we can ask the questions that are necessary to have real solutions for any of the problems that Medgar Evers might have. And I want to be clear, the Borough President's Office has very limited discretionary funding when it comes to operations. The funding that we do have is capital dollars. So there might be some parts of the institution that might need some help or some rehabilitation that we could take on as borough presidents. And then maybe you can free up some money by not having to do that work and move it to programs that are more vital to your students.
All right, thank you for that response, Candidate Reynoso. Now we're going to turn to you, Candidate Simon. Outline a plan of support for us.
Well, I'm a collaborator. I'm somebody who believes in working with people. And so the first thing I would do is invite President Ramsey to my office to meet, and also the presidents of other colleges in Brooklyn as well. We have 4 CUNY institutions. And CUNY and SUNY, as a state legislator who served on the Higher Education Committee, we have starved SUNY and CUNY of funds for many, many years, particularly in the area of capital and a lot of the support for the equal opportunity programs. We've refunded some of them this year, but we didn't increase them very much. And so really working together to advocate for that type of increase. I've worked at colleges and universities myself.